one day somebody does something unspeakable to someone else, to someone you hardly knew, and you do something about it, because you can.
This story comes to us from the Associated Press, where a Vermont judge has denied the city of Burlington's request to dismiss a lawsuit alleging that the police used excessive force and discriminated against a black teenager whose mother had called law enforcement to teach him a lesson about stealing. Do that. When the 14-year-old, who has behavioral and intellectual disabilities, failed to hand over the last of the stolen e-cigarettes on May 15th of 2021, 2 police officers physically forced him to do so, according to the lawsuit, and police body camera video that was shared with the Associated Press by the ACLU of Vermont.
The police came. She had explained to them before they went up to his room that he has intellectual disabilities. He hadn't been feeling well, that he was just off. So police went to his room, and for about 10 minutes, they tried to negotiate with him to turn over the devices. He didn't, so they put hands on him and wrested out of his grasp. The teen lashed out at the officers and kind of got agitated to a point where they decided to handcuff him.
Now, the teen was handcuffed and pinned to the ground in his house as he screamed and struggled, according to the lawsuit. He was injected with the sedative ketamine and taken to a hospital, according to the lawsuit and the video that's out there. The lawsuit filed by the teen's mother accuses officers of treating him differently because they perceived him as aggressive due to his race, pulling that race card. It also alleges that injecting him with ketamine was race-based disparate treatment. Burlington officers had visited the home before and were aware of the teen's disabilities, the lawsuit says. Quote, "Too often victims of police violence are denied their day in court because of an unjust legal doctrine called qualified immunity," says the Vermont ACLU attorney Harrison Stark. He went on, "We are thrilled that the court has agreed that this get-out-of-court-free card is no excuse to close the courthouse doors." Now, the city did not immediately return an email seeking comment, and they won't. Now, a city spokesperson said in February of this year that an investigation found that officers and fire department EMTs acted according to city and state regulations and policies. The Associated Press generally doesn't identify minors who are accused of crimes, but the body cam video of the 2 police officers shows them talking calmly to the teen who is sitting on a bed. His mother tells him, "Cooperate." She goes through the drawers and finds most of the remaining e-cigarettes and tries to get the last one from him. Officers say if he turns the e-cigs over, they'll leave and he won't be charged. After about 10 minutes, the officers forcibly remove the last of the e-cigarette from his hand by pulling the 230-pound teen's arms behind his back and pinning him against the bed.
According to court documents, Kathy Austrian called the police on her 14-year-old son after he allegedly stole vape pens from a nearby convenience store. She was hoping to use this incident as a teachable moment. Austrian says she told the police about her son's long history of behavioral and intellectual disabilities. Police were able to recover all of the pens except for one. That's when the situation escalated. Officers put the 14-year-old in handcuffs and wrestled him to the floor. In the lawsuit, the ACLU of Vermont also says the 14-year-old was given ketamine, which is a powerful sedative.
The city argued that the police officers conducted a reasonable search and seizure, that its police and fire departments are not subject to the Vermont Fair Housing and Public Accommodations Act, and that they made reasonable efforts to account for the teen's disabilities, and that its police and fire departments are protected by qualified immunity, according to the judge. That qualified immunity, that's a get-out-of-jail-free card, get-out-of-court-free. The crime was not serious. He did not pose an immediate threat, and he did not try to evade arrest by flight, says Vermont Superior Court Judge Helen Tour. She wrote that in her ruling July 31st of this year. The police officers also should have taken into account his reported mental health conditions, she wrote. That might have involved waiting more than 10 minutes before using any kind of physical force. Tour also wrote that the allegations are more than sufficient to support a claim of racial discrimination. She also wrote the court has no basis to dismiss any of the claims on qualified immunity grounds at this stage. Now, the city has 3 weeks from the judge's ruling to respond. That's probably the end of August. A city spokesperson said by email on Tuesday that the city did not want to comment on or make predictions about the likelihood of any particular outcome as this case moves forward through the court. Now, the use of ketamine on suspects has recently come under scrutiny. At least 17 people have died in the state of Florida over a decade following encounters with police during which medical personnel injected them with sedatives. An investigation led by the Associated Press found this out. Back in Burlington, Vermont, after the city investigated, the mayor at the time ordered the fire department to review the use of ketamine, and the state has updated protocols to require a doctor's permission, the city spokesperson said in February. Paramedics in the Burlington teens case did get a doctor's permission, even though it wasn't required at the time. So, a couple of things here, and then I'll quit. One, mom called the police to teach her son a lesson. No. Especially if he's challenged, a challenged person. Don't do that. Because many law enforcement officers don't really appear to have the training needed to interact with challenged persons. Whether they're mentally challenged or physically challenged, cops just don't, especially if they're mentally challenged, cops don't get it. If they're mentally handicapped, cops don't get that, a lot of times. They'll grab them. And one of the things you don't do with somebody, especially if they have Down syndrome or some other issue going on, don't touch. But cops, they grab them and pull them on the ground. He's resisting. Well, yeah, that's what they do. They can't think like you and I. So mom called the cops. That's number one. Number two, the ketamine issue. And now they're going to come up with a protocol where they have to get a doctor's order. These guys say they did, even though it wasn't required at the time. And the thing about this ketamine, the thing that came up right away when I was reading this story was Elijah McClain of Aurora, Colorado. That's the name that popped in my head immediately. I've done several stories on him. You can Google it if you want. Elijah McClain, Aurora, Colorado. When are they going to learn?